Welcome to the King Obed Podcast, the podcast that is set for your personal growth, development, inspiration, and motivation. In today's episode, we are set with Terry Tucker, who has been an NCAA basketball Division I player and someone who has gone through a lot of challenges and adversities. He's a man who has defied all odds and he's doing it. We are here to talk about how you can go beyond the mental blockade and get over your adversities and the challenges of life. So welcome to the King Obed Podcast, Terry Tucker.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
Great. So in summary, who is Terry Tucker?
Terry Tucker's an old guy right now. I mean, I've done so many, or had the opportunity to do so many things in my life. You mentioned I played college basketball. I worked in the fast food industry here in the United States in their marketing department. I was a hospital administrator for a while. And then at 37 years old, I became a police officer, kind of made that major pivot in my life and got into law enforcement. And one of the things I did as a police officer was I was a SWAT hostage negotiator. After that, I started a school security consulting business. I coach girls high school basketball. But for the last 13 years now, I've been battling a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma that back in 2012, when I was diagnosed, I was told that I would be dead in 2 years. So I looked at the doctors and said, well, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I can turn that death sentence into a life sentence. So far, I've been able to do that.
Wow. So you've been able to move from a death sentence to a life sentence. How was the feeling like when you were diagnosed with melanoma?
It was horrible. I mean, it hit me out of left field. As I mentioned, at the time I was coaching girls high school basketball, and I had a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, right below my third toe, and initially didn't think much of it because as a coach, you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an x-ray and he said, Terry, I think you have a cyst in there and I can cut it out. And Obed, he did. He cut it out and he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from him. And as I said, he was a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he's having explaining to me what's going on, the more frightened I am becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years, and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. And as a result, he sent me to, I think, one of the best cancer hospitals here in the United States, MD Anderson, to have basically the bottom of my foot excised and all the lymph nodes in my groin removed. And that's when the doctors told me, the only thing we have to offer you is surgery. So more than likely, you'll be dead in 2 years.
Wow. Wow. How did your family receive that news that you're going to be dead in the next 2 years?
Yeah, you can imagine. I mean, it hit all of us like a ton of bricks, like, bricks falling on us. We were all like, wait a minute. And I guess let me say this. I look at doctors kind of as bookies, people that place bets on things. They look at you based on your age, based on your overall health, and based on your stage of cancer.
Yes.
And they say, based on that, we will give you X number of years to live. But what doctors don't know is that you want to see your daughter graduate from college. Mm-hmm. You want to walk your daughter down the aisle. You want to play with your grandkids. So having a purpose beyond your disease, beyond your cancer, is something I think is very important because it's something to live for. The Holocaust survivor and the man who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, a guy by the name of Viktor Frankl, who was a doctor during the Auschwitz, in Auschwitz, the concentration camps during World War II. He had a great line in that book. He said, once people lose the will to live, they almost never get it back. I never wanted to lose the will to live. I never wanted to not be able to answer that question, do you want to live? yes, I want to live. I want to have something to look forward.
Wow. So you've not lost the will to live.
No,
Did you do
I've
that?
never lost the will to live. I've always felt that there was a purpose. And I think this is incredibly important. Whatever. For me, it's cancer. It doesn't have to be cancer. But I learned a couple things during this whole journey through cancer. Number one, I don't think you truly know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. For me, it's cancer. For other people, it may be something different. And secondly, cancer has made me a better human being. And I know people have asked me, if you could live your life over again without cancer, would you do that? And Obed, I don't think I would. I think cancer has made me a much better human being. It's focused me on what's important in life. So I don't think I would trade the fact that, I had my leg amputated in 2020. I had my foot amputated before that in 2018 as a result of the disease. I still would take the amputations and the cancer knowing that I'm a much better person today.
Wow. So moving from a death sense to a life sense, now you think that having that will and that purpose has contributed to you being alive, despite the fact that a doctor pronounced that in 2 years' time you're going to die.
Yeah. I think even now, I've been through a lot of things. There have been plenty of times I should have died. I ended up one time because of the medicine I was on in the intensive care unit at the hospital with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which from your experience in medicine, and that's not compatible with being alive. You should be dead. But somehow I survived that. And when I had my leg amputated, I also found out I had tumors in my lungs. I still have tumors in my lungs that I'm being treated for. And I remember my doctor showed me my CT scan, my CAT scan. And Obed, I don't know how to read a CAT scan. I've never been, have any kind of medical background.
Yeah.
But I had these big tumors in my lungs. I had fluid all around the pleural spaces in my lungs. And I remember looking at my doctor and saying, how was I alive? Until the day I die, I will never forget this. He put his head down. He shook his head no. And then he looked up at me and he said, I don't know, because you shouldn't have been. Which said to me, God is not done with me yet. That there's a reason I'm here. I think today, God is using my infirmity, my malignancy, to show people his goodness, his power, his love, his mercy, and his grace. And if that's what God wants to do with me until I die, I'm pretty good with that.
Wow. God is not done with you yet. I like that statement. And for the very fact of that, you were pronounced to be dead in a space of 2 years. Now you had that will and that energy and that zeal to be alive. Do you think that is the striking difference between those, for instance, who have been in such situations and couldn't survive, and yourself who survived? Is that a striking difference?
That's a great question. I think yes. I think it is. Because I've always wanted my life to be based on the decisions that I made, not on the decisions that I didn't make or that somebody else has made for me. And I'll look at the opposite side of that. I was given 2 years to live, and 13 years later, I'm still alive. But I also know people who have been given 2 years to live and literally die on the date of that 2-year anniversary.
Some die even before.
Yes, totally. And if that was the case, that was fine. I was good with that. But I was going to make decisions, and I've always told this to my doctor, explain to me what you want to do and explain to me the outcome that you're looking for whatever you want to do. And don't explain it to me in medicalese. I don't understand how doctors talk. Explain it to me as a human being.
A human being.
And if I can understand it and it makes sense, then we'll do it. If you can't explain it to me and you can't tell me what your outcome is going to be or what you want it to be, then there's a very good chance that I'll say, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay. So you think that our mental toughness and our thinking plays a role, or our thoughts plays a crucial role in us surviving a certain kind of situation or circumstance?
Yes, it plays a huge role. I think it plays the most important role is our mind. Our mind overrides our body. Our mind controls our body. And you know that. You've seen patients or animals that you take care of or whatever it ends up being. The mind controls the body. And if you can't control your mind is going to control you. And I always give this to people. I do this every day in my life. So I'm not offering this to your audience as something that I don't do. If you want to develop that mental toughness that you were just talking about, do one thing every day that scares you, that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, somebody close to us dies, we unexpectedly get let go from our job, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you will be so much more resilient to handle those things than those people who never test themselves every day.
Okay, so for you, you think that our thoughts are crucial, and there are people who think that they can control their thoughts, but rather their thoughts control them.
Ask me that one more time, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I was asking that for you, you think that there are people who think that their thoughts, right, controls them, and there are people who think they can control their thoughts. Where can we find a balance?
So here's the way I look at it. So the Cleveland Clinic, which is a major healthcare organization here in the United States, estimates that we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our minds every day.
Okay.
And only about 3,500 of those thoughts are new thoughts. So we have a lot of things that, we've been thinking about for a while and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain operates at a speed of about 1,000 words a minute.
A minute.
But given all that, your mind can still hold only one thought at a time. Why would you want to make that a negative thought?
A negative thought.
And what I've seen in my life is that thoughts in and of themselves are neutral and arbitrary. They just come into our minds, whatever it is. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? Or what am I going to watch on television? Or what am I going to do this weekend? Those are just thoughts. Where we get into trouble with our thoughts is when we start to think about our thoughts. So thoughts are neutral. Thinking is where we get into trouble, because now we assign emotions, or we assign feelings, or we assign something that happened to us, whether it's good or bad, when we start to think about those thoughts. So thoughts are neutral. Thinking is where we can make things good or bad based on how we approach that. And I will say this, most people, and I've done this in my life, you may have too, most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that in my life. I know I've wanted to get involved in a project, and you sort of pull back. You're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
Maybe I'm not smart enough, or maybe I don't have enough information, or what will people say about me if I fail? That's thinking with our fears and insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds.
So from what you've explained, we cannot guard our minds against the thoughts, but we can guard our minds against the thinking.
Exactly. Interesting, right?
Yes, very, very interesting and very revealing, because all along I thought that yes, for everything that the mind conceives, the mind produces, whatever comes into the mind, you have the ability to be able to change it. You have the ability to be able to expand it, to control it, because you, like we say, the mind is the greatest asset a man has.
Absolutely. But that's just it. I mean, if somebody calls you a bad name, you have the ability to say, oh, that hurt me, or you have the ability to say, that means nothing to me. You're just throwing names out and it doesn't stick. And so you have the choice to control your mind. You have the choice. Let me give you a kind of a better story. I went to college. I went to a military college here in the United States. And we had, as president of the school one year, a man who had been a prisoner of war during the Vietnam conflict back in the 1960s and 1970s. And he spent 8 years as a prisoner of war. And somebody asked him, who were the people that survived that brutality, that torture? And he said, well, let me tell you who didn't survive. He said it wasn't the big, strong, tough guys who thought that they could handle any kind of abuse or torture. And he said the other group, and this surprised me, He said the other group that didn't survive were the optimists. He said these were the people who thought they would be rescued or let go by Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. And he said those holidays would come and go and they wouldn't be released. And he said those people died of a broken heart. He said the people who survived were the people who understood what they could control, which according to him was basically the breathing in our lungs and the thoughts in our mind. Everything else was at the discretion of the enemy and controlled them. So I always recommend to people, if you're having trouble with something's bothering you, just get a piece of paper and write down every single thing that's bothering you. Get it all out on a piece of paper. And then once you have everything on the paper, go through and cross out everything that you don't have absolute control over. Whatever's left on that paper is something you can start to work.
Okay. So how do we take that power back? The power to be able to control our thinking. For we know now that we cannot control the thoughts, but we can control the thinking. How can we get that power back? For some of us who have lost it, and always this thinking based on the fears, like you said, and the insecurities, which have, always clouded our minds, and we cannot make a firm decision on the things we want to do.
I always think this isn't something that you can do overnight. Like, you're not going to flip a switch and all of a sudden, you're going to be a positive person if you've been a negative person your whole life. But I think you have to pay attention to the thoughts that are coming into your mind. And you have to decide, do you want to give those thoughts power over you? You have that choice. You can think about them in a positive way, or you can think about them in a negative way. I remember when I was in high school, I had 3 knee surgeries. I was a basketball player, but I had 3 knee surgeries. And I remember when I went back playing basketball after those knee surgeries, my brain was putting all kinds of negative thoughts into my mind. Things like, hey, you're probably a step slower since your operations, or college coaches aren't going to be interested in recruiting you to play for their school. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I'm still playing at a high level, at an elite level, and coaches are still reaching out about the possibility of getting a scholarship to their school. I learned early, like at 15, I needed to change the narrative. I needed to say, those aren't negative things. I am better than that. I'm taking control over those thoughts and not using them as something negative that can hurt me. I'm going to use them as something positive that can motivate.
Wow. So how did you develop that mental discipline as a person when you needed to push through the challenge of you having faced that life-threatening condition, melanoma, and then having your leg amputated? How did you develop that mental discipline?
I think it's something that I've accumulated over my life. Like, as I mentioned, I learned early when I was 15 or so that I needed to be able to control my mind. I needed to use my thoughts in a positive way as opposed to a negative way, because we all become what we think. And I'll give you an example. If I took a basketball and I went out onto the court and I started to shoot free throws, if you could look at my brain under an MRI, there would be a certain portion of my brain that would light up, that would glow on that scan, because that was what was being engaged as I was doing those free throws. The other interesting thing is that if you thought about taking that basketball, going out on that court and shooting those free throws, that exact same area in your brain would light up. So your brain doesn't know whether you're actually doing it or you're thinking about doing it. So be very careful how you talk to yourself. We all talk to ourselves, whether we like to admit it or not. We all have that inner dialogue that kind of goes on. And sometimes, we engage it. Sometimes we just dismiss it. But make sure that whatever's going in, it's kind of like if you eat good food, you'll get good results. Just like if you eat bad food, it'll be bad for your body. The same thing works with your mind. Put good stuff into your mind. Put things into your mind that's going to benefit you. And so that's what I learned. I was like, you know what? I don't like the cards that I've been dealt here, but what's the meaning in my misery? What's the message that this misery is supposed to teach me? Because we don't suffer just in vain. There's a reason. There's a reason that we have bad things happen to us. You're supposed to learn something from that. What are you learning from your adversity in life?
Okay. So you champion the fact that we should embrace pain. And pain is something everyone tries to avoid, praise that we don't face pain and everything. But for you, where you sit, you champion that we should embrace pain as a growth catalyst. Why that? Why do you champion that?
Because the only way you're going to grow is to get outside your comfort zones and do things that you don't want to do. But our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now, is comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. But we all know this. The only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve is to step outside your comfort zones and to do things that make you uncomfortable. That's the only way you're going to grow. If you never do anything to challenge yourself, to say, you know what, this is hard, this is difficult. I've always felt like that if I knew the outcome, if I knew the answer, it wasn't worth doing. If I knew I was going to be successful at it, it really wasn't worth doing. I want to do something that challenges me to get better, that stretches me, that's like, ooh, this is hard, this is uncomfortable. But at the end of it, whether I win or lose, and I'm going to give you a quote from Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa. He had a great quote. He said, I never lose. I either learn or I win. And I love that quote because no matter what happens to you, whether you're successful or not, if you can learn something, you've actually won.
So we should not run away from pain. We should embrace pain because that is the catalyst which will help us to grow as individuals or human beings.
Yeah, pain is inevitable in our lives. We're all going to experience it.
Yeah, definitely. It's inevitable.
Suffering, on the other hand, suffering's optional. Suffering depends on what you do with that pain. Do you take it and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want others to feel sorry for you? Which hand are you going to grab?
Wow. So at what point, maybe throughout your journey that you've narrated, basketball player, a coach, suffering from cancer, a SWAT negotiator, cancer warrior, and all. At what point were you able to turn pain into power?
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I was a little kid, when my mother would take me to the doctor to get a vaccination, whether, polio, measles, whatever it ended up being, I would wait till she got out of the car and I'd lock all the doors from the inside. And this is before they had key fobs, that you could open a car door with, because I was so afraid of pain. And it was from basically experiencing pain and having I had my leg amputated in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and they sent me home 48 hours after they took my leg off. I didn't even have my pain under control, let alone know how to function without having a leg. But you learn from pain. You learn that you can handle. You learn that you're stronger than you think you are. And it goes back to the mindset part that we were talking about. You've got to be able to control your mind, because your mind's going to tell you, oh, this hurts, this is uncomfortable, stop doing that. My feeling is, if my brain's telling me it hurts, it's uncomfortable, and I should stop doing it, I need to move forward. I need to stop listening to my, and we know this from distance runners, people who run marathons and things like that. They get to a point, I don't care how good you are, where they hit what they call the wall, where, oh my gosh, I don't think I can go on. I've depleted my carbohydrates. I don't have any fuel left. I can't do this. But they know that if they keep moving forward, eventually they'll get that second wind and they'll be able to finish the race. That's life. That's the race we're all in life. Our brains tell us, oh, this hurts, this is uncomfortable, stop. And so many people listen to that. It's like, okay, I'm going to stop. But the people that can move forward, that have just a little bit of grit in their life, they're like, you know what? No, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. Those are the people that can be successful.
Wow. So in terms of how should we deal with our emotions? Because I know that all those come with that emotional arousal within us, and it tends to affect our reaction to how we manage these situations. So how should we deal with emotions?
Ben, that's a great question. I don't want your audience or yourself to think that I don't have bad days. I mentioned I still have tumors in my lung. I'm still treated at the hospital.
Yeah.
And during those days, I have a very bad reaction to the medicine I'm given. I cry. I get down. I feel sorry for myself. I absolutely get into that kind of, oh, woe is me thing. But it's a choice on whether you're going to stay there or not. And I just choose, yes, this is hard. Yes, this hurts. Yes, I wish I wasn't going through this. But you know what? I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other. I'm not going to try to run a marathon. I'm just going to try to put one foot in front of the other and keep going and keep moving forward. And that is absolutely a choice. And I'll say this, and I find that this helps me. When I'm in that kind of down and depressed state, I'm looking inward. Woe is me. This is terrible. I feel bad. It's all about me, 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 me. I find a very easy way, at least for me, to get out of that is to turn that to the outside, to find somebody to help. And when I say help, it may just be somebody you go say hi to. Mm-hmm. Hi, how you doing? Hey, do you want to have a cup of coffee? Are you okay? Now, all of a sudden, I'm not focused on me anymore. I'm focused on making a difference in someone else's life.
Yeah.
So take your ugliness, flip it around, and go try to help another person that's maybe having a bad day. All of a sudden, you're not concentrating on your own pain.
Okay. So in terms of pain, should we allow people to express their emotions? Should we allow people to go through that emotional, like downtime where they say, allow me to express myself, allow me to do whatever I want to do in this time of trouble or pain?
I would say yes. I mean, I think crying's good for us. There are benefits to cry. Men don't cry. We're tough. We don't cry. I cry.
That's what I say.
I cry, but I cry. And I find I feel better. It releases those emotions. It releases that stress that I'm feeling in my life if I cry. Now, I'm not saying I'm crying like a blubbering idiot for like 5 hours or anything like that, but a good cry from time to time helps me. It makes me feel better from a stress point of view. It helps me to sleep. It helps reduce, the anxiety that I'm having and things like that. So absolutely, I would encourage people to vent your frustrations, not in a mean way, not towards somebody else, but to just say, look, I'm having a hard time right now.
Yes.
Can you just sit with me? Can you just be with me and let me vent for a while to let me get some of that emotional energy out? And I find when I do that, I feel better when I express my emotion.
Wow. So the bottom line is that we should allow people in times of pain, in times of trouble, in times of adversities for them to express themselves freely and let it go. In that space of time, after a bit of time has passed or elapsed, they'll be fine.
They'll be better. At least they'll feel better. Like I said, we know scientifically that when we cry, when we get those things out, it reduces our stress level, it reduces our anxiety, and it makes us feel better. And if we're operating at an emotional state, we used to talk about this when I was a hostage negotiator. When we started negotiating with somebody, their emotional brain was way up in the air and their rational brain was way down on the ground. And over time, by asking them questions and letting burn off a lot of that emotional energy, you sort of get their emotions to an equilibrium point. And then hopefully you get to a point where their rational brain is up in the air and their emotional brain is on the ground. When their rational brain is engaged, then you can start talking about solutions, coming out, putting the gun down, letting the hostages go. You can't do that when somebody's yelling and screaming and ranting and raving and they're emotional. Mm-hmm. We make better decisions for ourselves with our rational brains or our logical brains than we do with our emotional brains.
So we should allow people to get to that rationality at that point, or the rational level of their minds or brain, in order to make that firm decisions or take that good decision for themselves.
Yes.
Great. This is an eye-opening conversation with regards to mental toughness, because these are things we go through every time. Each and everybody goes at the point of their low moments and their high moments. And sometimes even the low moments is when these things, we get a mental breakdown and there is nothing to do for ourselves. We run out of everything. We run out of power, energy, and we can't even do anything for ourselves. So I think it's a very important conversation and then an area for us to dwell on. And I know listeners viewers will enjoy this part of the conversation. Yeah, so you talk about the fact that we, as individuals or human beings, we should be able to leave a legacy behind. We should be able to weave something in the minds, in the hearts of others. In a world now where we are all chasing money, chasing, success, material stuff, how can we leave a legacy that is well defining and that will leave an imprint or impact in the generation where we find ourselves and then those yet unborn?
Absolutely. And I think we all can leave a legacy. And I think it's just a matter of sort of changing the paradigm, changing the outlook in our mind. And I've seen a lot of people in my life that feel that they are born empty. And that when they get out of school and they get into life, whatever that looks like for them, that then their job is to fill up their empty cell. Like you say, I've got to make the most money. I've got to drive the nicest car. I've got to live in the nicest house and have the greatest family. And what I found is it's just the opposite. We're not born empty. We're born full. We're born with everything we need to be successful in life, however you define that word for yourself, already inside us. We just need to find that part of it, pull it out, and use it for our benefit. So our job in life should not be to fill ourselves up. Our job in life should be to empty ourselves out with our unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of ourselves, but also for the betterment of our family, of our friends, of our communities, and our countries. And when you make that shift, because if you spend your whole life going after power and money and influence and stuff, you'll never be satisfied. There'll always be one more thing that you need. Well, if I get this, then I'll be happy. Well, wait a minute, I got that. No, if I get that, I'll be happy. When you change to not what I can get, but what I can give to other people, it's amazing how much peace, how much comfort, how much awareness of your purpose in life you get when you realize it's not about me. It's about how I can make a difference in the life of somebody else.
Okay. So how can we identify these things you are talking about, these gifts, these abilities, these talents in every individual? Like you said, we have something in us. How can we unravel? How can we uncover them to be able to maximize them and then use it to help humanity?
Yeah, we all have, and I thoroughly believe this. And if you don't believe me, I'll go back to Viktor Frankl, who I mentioned earlier, who was a concentration camp survivor, who talked about how we should not live our life in the abstract, that everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a reason they were put on the face of this earth. And we almost have a moral obligation to find that purpose in life and to live it. So I would tell you, we all have unique gifts and talents. Let me kind of explain it this way. And I know I've made this mistake in my life where, you make an arbitrary milepost. You say, okay, by the time I'm 28 years old, I want to be making X amount of money. I'm just going to say $100,000. And by the time I'm 35 years old, I want to be married and I want to have 2 children. And when those things happen in life and you're not making $100,000 at 28 years old, and you're 35 and you're not in a relationship and you don't have a family or things like that, somehow you think you're a failure. And the best way I've ever heard to kind of live your life, and I wish I would have known this when I was younger, is this. The person described this as living your life in decades. So he says, in your 20s, do everything. Anything that remotely interests you, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's entertainment, whatever it is, if it interests you, do it. Make all kinds of mistakes, mess up all over the place, not for the sake of making mistakes, but for the sake of what you learn from those mistakes. And then in your fees, find those 2 or 3 things that you really enjoyed from your 20s and get into those. And then in your fees, find that one thing. When you're older, you're more established, you're more mature, and dig into it. And he said, then in your 50s and your 60s and beyond, you will reap the benefits. You will reap the rewards of living in your life in decades. So if you do it that way, you don't put out those arbitrary mileposts. that you don't meet. Then all of a sudden I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. Live your life in your 20s. Do everything. In your 30s, find those things to dig into. In your 40s, find the one thing you're supposed to do. And then the rest of your life, reap the benefits of how you live that life.
Okay. Yes.
What do you think? Do you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah, I think that sometimes, like you said, I was just coming about when you mentioned fear and insecurities as something that stops us from doing a lot of things. And for me, largely, I think that these are some of the things that stops us from moving on, trying to identify what we have as human beings or individuals, and then expanding it or maximizing it, because everyone has something inside of us. How do we uncover it? How do we see it? How do we get to know it? To be able to use it. This morning, I discovered something. It is, he says, discover, develop. And then one last D, I forgot it. He says, discover, develop, and then think, deliver to the world, yourself, your ingenuity or your genius self to the world. So if all of us are able to develop ourselves, get to discover the talent in us, the abilities in us, we will be able to do greater exploits, do better things for ourselves and the world will be a better place, as you are saying. So I believe in that, and I subscribe to that. I have even written a book specifically on that thing, uncovering or unlocking your untapped abilities, which you find in yourself, to be able to, whatever God has given to us, we should be able to maximize it for the benefit of the world, because we are here to make an impact in the world. So I strongly believe in that.
And you're right. I mean, but we're here for such a small period of time. I mean, people think, we're here for, I mean, we're not. We're here and we're gone. We're like vapor. We're like dust. It's like, it's here and it's gone. And people always think, oh, I've got more time. And I'm not telling you that you've got to be crazy about, finding your purpose and things like that. You need to enjoy yourself. There needs to be recreation and things like that. But there's a reason you were here. And I think one of the things that scares me the most is at the end of my life, if I go back to my creator and he says to me, well, Terry, I gave you these gifts and talents. What did you do with them? And I say nothing, would be one of the worst things I could think of doing. And that I think so many people in life, we talk about this like everybody does it. 90% of the people never do it. People never think, never even contemplate what it means to be great at something purposeful in their life. They just muddle through their life. They complain, they whine, oh, well, life is unfair. That's like, you know what? Nobody's coming to your rescue. Nobody's going to be here to help you.
Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you.
Exactly. Totally. And people look at you like, oh, yeah, somebody. No, nobody's coming to save you. If you want something in life, you have to figure it out and do it. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Nobody is coming to do it for us. And so we shouldn't quit. As long as we don't quit, we cannot be defeated. And you subscribe to that. But what are some of the things that you think make people quit in their line of trying to pursue their purpose or maximize their talents and stuff? Why do you think people quit? Because we know there are so many quitters along the line.
Well, absolutely. You're right. I think one of the biggest things is fear. People are either afraid of failing or, and this is going to sound kind of weird, afraid of succeeding in life.
People are afraid of succeeding.
Yeah, they're afraid to succeed. I mean, what does that look like? Maybe, if I'm successful, I don't know where to go. And this is what people don't understand. It's not when you make it to the top of the mountain, or it's not when you make it to the end of the rainbow. It's the journey to get there. And if your audience remembers nothing that I say today, I want them to remember this piece of advice that I'm going to give you. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people that care about you. Find people that are willing to invest in you. Find people that want to see you succeed, and hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together.
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people that care about you. Find people that are willing to invest in you. Find people that want to see you succeed and hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together.
Wow. Wow. So the people we are working with, the people we are working for, the environment, the people we've surrounded ourselves with is so crucial to the success of the journey that we are on than any other thing. And so that we should make very conscious effort, or we should be very intentional to tie ourselves with those people.
Yeah, we've always heard that you're a product of the 5 people you hang around with the most.
Yes.
So if you hang around with smart people, you're going to be smart. If you hang around with rich people, you're going to be rich. If you hang around with people that have good character, you're going to have good character. And conversely, the same is true. If you hang around with people that are all about drama, you're going to be all about drama. If you hang around with people that are always negative, you're going to be negative. If you hang around with people that think the world's against them, you're going to think the world's against you. So find the right people to get into bed with, to get, on your journey with. Go with those people. People that, and I know that's easier said than done, because sometimes those people that are negative are part of your family. And they're always there. They're always saying something wrong. They're never lifting you up. They're never telling you they're proud of you. They're never telling you they love you, or they're glad you're successful. They're always trying to tear you down. You have to try to find a way to keep those people out of your life. I know that's easier said than done, especially when they're family, but surround yourself with better people. You surround yourself with better people, you will be a better person.
So what's your advice to those who are on the verge of giving up?
Say that one more time, please.
What's your advice to those who are on the verge of giving up or on the edge of giving up?
That's a great question. I'll tell you this story. I think this will illustrate the answer to that. Back in the 90s here in the United States at Johns Hopkins University, there was a professor who was doing an experiment with rats. And he basically wanted to see how long the average rat could tread water. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes before it sunk and drowned. And then he put another group of rats in the same tank of water to see how long they would survive. And he watched the rats. And just as they were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took those exact same rats and he put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours.
Wow.
Now think about that. The first time, 15 minutes. It's not like, your marriage was going to go under, or your business was going to fail, or you're going to flunk a test in school. You're going to die. Your life was going to be over.
Yeah.
And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me 2 things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. That if we know we're doing the right thing, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but nothing's 100%. There's a good chance if you're doing the right thing, you will eventually get to where you want to be. Like I said, nothing's 100%, but there's a good chance. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. This kind of goes to your question. How do we, we're getting ready to give up. What do we do? Your physical body, don't get me wrong, I think we all have a breaking point, but that breaking point is so much farther down the road than we ever thought it was. And I'm going to bring this back around full circle to what we were talking about with our minds. Your brains are going to tell you to quit. Your brains are going to tell you to give up. Your brains are going to tell you this is over. Stop doing this. This is uncomfortable. It hurts. You need, and you can, your physical body can handle so much more than you ever thought it could. And those rats are a perfect example. 60 hours. Think about that. 15 minutes to 60 hours. That's more than 2 days.
Yeah. Incredible.
Versus 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's our bodies. We can do so much more than we thought we could. So if you're thinking you're at the end of your rope, you can't go on, there's no way, you can go on. And I'll end with this. The Navy SEALs are some of the toughest military people we have here in the United States. The Navy SEALs talk about what they call their 40% rule. And that basically says that if you're done, if you're at the end of your rope, if you can't go on, you're only at 40% of your maximum. And you still have another 60% left in reserve to give to yourself. So the next time you think you're going to quit, next time you think you can't go on, remember, you're only at 40% of your maximum. You still have another 60% left
to go. Yeah. Wow. This has been very enlightening conversation, building your mental toughness and getting to the fact that yes, we cannot control the thoughts, but we can control the thinking. And I think that is what sometimes it gets over us and then we do not know what to do with ourselves. So I think anyone who gets to see this video or listen to the audio will be able to know when to control your thinking so that it doesn't get over you and you'll be able to take control over your life.
Very important. If you can master that, it's amazing what you can do.
Great. So what it will be your final words to us, to the listeners? Where can we connect with you? And then the kinds of works you do, the books you've written, can you take time to share with us so that we can connect?
Sure. So you can connect with me on motivationalcheck.com or send me an email at motivationalcheck@aol.com. I still use AOL. I'm old school. I like AOL.
When I saw that, I was like, wow. AOL.
I know. It was an AOL, right? I told you I was old. So I love hearing from people. So please feel free to reach out and leave me a message. I wrote a book called Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. A lot of the things we talked about today.
There should be another episode where we can talk just about that book.
Say that one more time.
I said there should be another episode where we will just talk about that book.
Yeah, because a lot of what we talked about today is not in that book. I'm writing a new book now that talks a lot about what we did talk about today.
Okay.
And let me leave you with this one thought. And this is from a book called Farewell to Arms, which was written by a man by the name of Ernest Hemingway, which is kind of a semi-autobiographical account of his time as an ambulance driver for the Italian army during World War I. And there's a line in the book that I absolutely love. And the line is this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So when life breaks you, if you can continue to move forward, if you can continue to control the thoughts in your mind, you will come out the other side of that a stronger and more determined individual.
Wow. So we all be more stronger and determined individuals going out there to take control of our minds and the kind of life that we want to live. So we've dealt so well with how we will build our mental toughness, how we can leave a legacy behind, and then not to quit to overcome fear and our insecurities. So thank you very much, Terry Thacker, who has been an NCAA basketball player and a SWAT negotiator, a cancer warrior, and still living his dream, championing his purpose and maximizing everything that the Creator has given to him. Yes, thank you for coming on board, coming on the King Obed podcast to share your story and how we can build mental toughness with the audience. So I know the audience, I know the followers will enjoy. So follow Terry Thacker, as he mentioned, and there's another episode coming where we will discuss his book, The Sustainable Excellence, right? That, yes, we talk about the book and everything. So thank you very much for taking your time off your busy schedules to subscribe to the King Obed podcast and for listening to us. Until we meet again, let's be on the lookout to be the better version of ourselves and to put ourselves together to make the world a better place. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.